Hello, students! Today we are going to go over some poetry notes. Make sure you have the fill in the blank poetry notes in front of you and something to write with. I will make sure to say in the video when we should pause and fill in the blanks on our notes. So, today the big question that we are asking is what makes something a poem? How do you know if something is a poem or not? What features are really common to see in poetry? So, what is poetry? Poetry is a form of writing which centers form, sound, and figurative language in order to convey emotions and themes. So, pause the video here. These words that are underlined and bold are going to go in your fill in the blank notes. Poetry is a form of writing which centers form, sound, and figurative language in order to convey emotions and themes. Once you have those written, let's continue. Poetry can rhyme, but doesn't have to. Poetry can tell a story, or it can just be descriptive. Poetry can be very long or very short. Poetry often breaks the rules in order to make the reader pay attention and think. So pause here and make sure that you have filled in these blanks on your notes. All right, so let's look at a poem. This poem is called Ode to Enchanted Light by Pablo Neruda. Under the trees, light has dropped from the top of the sky, light like a green latticework of branches, shining on every leaf, drifting down like clean white sand. A cicada sends its sawing song high into the empty air. The world is a glass overflowing with water. So let's ask ourselves some questions. This poem, does it tell a story or is it just descriptive? Is it super long or is it super short? What emotion and message do you think they're trying to convey in this poem? And how is this author trying to get that emotion and message across? These are the questions that we ask ourselves whenever we read a poem. Now, we do need to get some general vocab out of the way. All right. So, whenever we're talking about poems, we're going to sometimes talk about the speaker. The speaker is like the narrator or the voice of the poem. It might be a specific person or character, or it could just be an unknown speaker. There are lines, which are not always a full sentence. It literally just describes a line on the page. And there are stanzas, which is like a chunk or a paragraph of the poem. So you can see here, this would be a single line, even though it's only two words, and this would be a stanza. This poem has three stanzas. Make sure, pause here, that you have these words written into your notes. Next, we need to talk about figurative language. These are non-literal Next, we need to talk about figurative language. These are non-literal phrases that an author or a poet will use in their writing. So some examples of figurative language will be similes. These are indirect comparisons. They include phrases such as like or as. He is as fast as a cheetah. Metaphors, which are direct comparisons, so you say one thing is something else. My brother is a monster before he's had his breakfast. And personification. This is describing a non human thing like it is human or like it is a person. So the alarm clock screamed at me in the morning. Let's look back in Ode to Enchanted Light. There are some examples in here. We have a simile that the light is drifting down like clean white sand. We have a metaphor, the world is a glass overflowing with water. And there's even a little bit of personification. The cicada, which is like a bug, is singing, which is something that humans would do. Now, pause here and make sure you have this part of the notes all filled out. Next, we need to talk about graphic elements. Graphic elements are the things you can see on the page. You wouldn't necessarily hear them if you just had the poem read to you, but it is about how the poem is actually printed on the page. So there's a lot of graphic elements we can look for, things like word size or placement, things like line length, the shape of the poem, or unusual capitalization or punctuation. So in this poem, these lines being incredibly short, we have just these little one word lines, might be an example of this. There's also some shape happening with the poem, right? So graphic elements are going to be those things you can see on the page. So pause here for a moment and make sure that you have these notes filled out. Next, we're going to talk about sound devices. Sound devices are the things you can hear when you have the poem read to you. So it's all about the sound that the words actually make. So some examples of this could be rhyming. Some poems rhyme, some poems don't. But if there's rhyming, look at the words that are rhyming. Is there some connection between them? Rhythm, which is like the beat of the poem, right? Like Humpty Dumpty had a big fall, that dun 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 dun. Some poems have a very clear beat or rhythm to them, some poems don't. Repetition is when words or phrases are repeated over and over in a poem. And then alliteration is the repetition of the starting sound, where several words close together start with the same sound. So in Ode to Enchanted Light, we have a little bit of repetition here. Light is repeated a few times. And we even have some alliteration. A cicada sends its sawing song. All of those sounds close together are alliteration. Even though cicada starts with a C and sawing song starts with an S, it's all alliteration because the sound is the same. All right, take a moment, make sure that your notes for this page are filled out. So before we go, I want you to consider this question. What are some reasons that a poet might use figurative language, graphic elements, and sound devices in their poem? Why use this craft? Why use these things instead of just leaving them out? Some of the reasons that you might give to answer this question would be that these tips and tricks can sort of draw your attention or create emphasis in a poem. These craft tools might connect ideas together. They might make two ideas seem related in some way. And they're going to impact the mood, right? They could make the poem feel more energetic or make the poem feel more calm, depending on how they are being used. All right. Make sure that every blank in your notes is filled out. If any of those blanks are not filled in, get with a buddy and make sure that you get them filled out now. Thank you.